taking that school from a point of, oh no, what are we going to do, to helping them understand that even despite these uncertain times, there are things within our circle of control that we can do to pave a better path forward.
That is Dr. Brandi Kelley, former superintendent, 2-time Principal of the Year, and leadership coach. When she stepped into a struggling middle school during the height of the pandemic, she focused first on people by helping a school move from uncertainty to shared ownership by centering leadership on human connection.
Students who have learning disabilities are just as intelligent as any other student. The teacher's challenge is to find the way that they learn best and untap that hidden potential within them.
Today, she shares how small, intentional actions like meeting students and families where they are can remove barriers, build trust, and accelerate achievement in ways systems alone never can. By the end of this conversation, you'll learn how student-centered leadership helps overcome academic, emotional, and cultural obstacles, even during moments of crisis, and how clarity, calm, and connection can unlock potential in both students and staff. I'm Dr. Matthew Flippen, and this is Transformational Educators. We're going to talk about your time at Sangamon Valley Middle School in Illinois. So take us through that. When did you arrive? What was going on at the school at the time? That were some of the obstacles that you spotted immediately?
I started out in education as a school social worker. And my end goal, Matthew, was to be the principal of my home school, the school where I attended when my brother Brandon drowned, and they encapsulated us, our entire family, with care and compassion. And so when I got that opportunity, they say, you make plans and God laughs. My goal was to retire there. That was not God's plan. So fast forward, I led another elementary school in Mount Zion, and then I had the opportunity to go back to the age that I love, middle school kids. I just love them. I'm one of those weird people that really enjoy spending time with middle school students. It was March of 2020, and everybody remembers that time, and I remember specifically sitting at my desk at McGoy Elementary School in Mount Zion, Illinois, listening to the governor's briefs, and somebody contacted me and told me about this opportunity to lead the middle school at Sangamon Valley. My first thought about this is I would be crazy to transition in the midst of a pandemic to a new school. But I also got excited about returning to an area that I loved. We were talking before the show about the fact that words matter. And a lot of times the people that I talked to about this opportunity, they talked about serving at-risk kids. And with my background as a school social worker, that's a passion. I really enjoy serving those middle school kids who have the obstacles in front of them and giving them hope, shining hope so that they can see that potential in themselves. And I love what you shared from a previous guest, that those kids aren't at risk, they're at potential. It's potential, it's hope, it's something that I love to do, is just to pour into them and to pour into the educators that are serving them. And so I took the job, I jumped, and we were facing all kinds of obstacles at that point in time, as were everybody else in the country, right? We were looking at all of the political pressures around COVID. Students were having to quarantine. We were having to navigate hybrid schedules, and those schedules might change every single day in some instances. Just all of the factors that we're facing the leaders and the educators and the students in a time in our world where everything was uncertain. So I took that position, and all of those obstacles were facing us. But what I learned very quickly, Matthew, was that the people in that school really had a student-centered heart. Their heart was for the kids, and they were willing to come in early, to stay late, to meet and to strategize and to prioritize what was best for the kids. And it was truly an amazing opportunity and an amazing experience.
From an assessment standpoint or a performance standpoint, how was the campus doing before you arrived? Just in terms of kind of key indicators that you would look to.
Before I arrived, there had been quite a bit of turnover in administration. Just looking at a glance at this school district, it was a consolidated district who had had quite a bit of turnover. The building was it was built in 1927. So the aesthetics and the overall feel of the building was not exactly what you would hope for in a campus. So it was one of those campuses that needed some love. It needed leadership. I really think that they looked at me as a source of hope because they saw what my background was. They saw where I was coming from. And whenever I came, the first thing I did, Matthew, is I scheduled individual interviews. Some were in person, some were virtual because of the time that we were living in. But my first step was just to connect with the educators and get to know them, get to know their families, get to know what they saw as pain points and how I could support them. And so that was, I would say, as a leader, one of the best actions that I took in taking this school district that was really in crisis at that point in time, because it was not a high performing school and COVID had just started. So they were in crisis, and taking that school from a point of, oh no, what are we going to do? We've got a new principal and everybody has angst around new leadership, right? That's just fact of life, to helping them understand that even despite these uncertain times, there are things within our circle of control that we can do to pave a better path forward. And the first step was just getting to know each other and focusing on the humanness, the heart-centered leadership that I quickly discovered was at the core of what was great at St. Valley Middle School.
The student performance, there were some challenges there, and those sounds like those were historical. Those had been there for a long time. Was low expectations one of the barriers that you were facing?
I think, unfortunately, yes, it was one of the barriers. And I think when you look at schools that the students, there's high poverty, there's low achievement, there are those kinds of socioeconomic issues. Another one that I see, as a school social worker, students with IEPs are another metric that I often look at. And when the percent of students with disabilities or identified disabilities in a school is high, sometimes people get that idea that they can't. They feel boxed in, like they're a bit hopeless and they can only take them so far. But my knowledge from being in special education for 11 years, I started out, like I said, as a school social worker at Effingham School District. Students who have learning disabilities are just as intelligent as any other student. They just learn differently. And that the teacher's challenge is to find the way that they learn best and untap that hidden potential within them. That's a challenge. It's a challenge, and it can be an obstacle, but we've got to get out of our own way and stop thinking I can't or they can't, because they absolutely can. I believe we can do just about anything that we put our minds to by the grace of God and with His support and His strength.
Yes, absolutely. Hey, thanks for joining us today. One of the things I love about these conversations is how they remind us your work in education matters, and your commitment to growth can ripple out to change entire communities. At Graceland University, we support educators on that journey through degree programs and partnerships rooted in purpose, not just credentials. For more information, see the QR code on screen or follow the link in the show notes. Now back to the episode. And let's focus in on expectations a little bit. So, obviously your training and background, you're like, yes, whatever the challenges or obstacles are, we can overcome those, right? And so that involves probably communicating we have higher expectations. What were some of the steps that you did to help the staff see that higher expectations were called for and help move them that direction?
Because I was at Sangamon Valley Middle School for a short time. I was only there 2 years before I took my superintendent role in Mount Olive School District. We didn't do everything that was on the 5-year plan, but where we started was looking at our multi-tier system of support. And there was an amazing group of teachers who met on a regular basis, and they looked at the data for each kid. How are they doing? What are the things that are working well for them? What's not working well for them? And they would strategize. And they had taken that on themselves before I got there. And it was something that we just kind of refined and tweaked a little bit and continued. Having those collaboration meetings was huge. But the biggest thing in our meetings is that oftentimes meetings devolve into gripe sessions, or we lose our effectiveness in our meetings. And so putting a framework, a structure around those meetings where you're starting your meetings and you're really setting an intention, celebrating your wins, tracking your progress, not necessarily looking for perfection, but looking for progress and building from a strengths-based perspective where, okay, Johnny is doing so much better in math. What are we doing in this area that is helping him to make improvement? And how can we replicate this in other areas where he's not doing so well? And the steps are tiny, it's small steps that compound over time. But just simple acts like that, we started seeing momentum. And I have to credit especially the special ed teachers in that school. We had 2 special ed teachers in that school that served the entire campus. And the campus we had a few hundred kids. So it wasn't a very big campus. But they were champions for these kids. They would push in to classrooms and co-teach with history teachers, English teachers, math teachers, and they really supported that whole child. And I think that is so incredibly important as well, is looking at the whole child, everything that child has going on, mind, body, and spirit, and really supporting that child, but also supporting the educator in the regular ed classroom who doesn't have the training, doesn't have that special ed training, and coming alongside them and really working as a team. And they did some amazing work in doing that. And I'm very proud of the teachers in that school.
Brandi, I love how you talk about these things, because one, you've described a situation where there were some expectation challenges. I would assume there was trust issues with leadership, again, because they've got turnover, right? I would assume there's some staff turnover that happened before you arrived. And yet you're describing now, after you're there in the role, this collaborative, student-centered approach. And I just want to recognize you facilitated that. And it was because of your positive, steady approach that those changes were allowed to happen. Staff was allowed to thrive because of what you were doing.
And again, just identifying your strengths and leaning into them, it's a superpower for us. And I think sometimes we miss that. One of my strengths is I am calm, I am consistent, I am steady. I think that comes from my social work background. We are trained in that. We have walked alongside our students and our families in navigating some of the worst times in their lives. And that calmness, especially amidst times of uncertainty, can really steady the ship and create that rhythm and stability that people need to thrive in our schools.
Yeah, safety, psychological safety, right? And when we talk about in the classroom, it's critical for learning to take place, right? Because many students are coming into, classrooms, they're coming out of high stress environments, and they need calm, rhythm, safety, right, in order, to learn. Adults need the same thing. And you know this probably better than I do, which is, they need that same, I can try things without fear of being reprimanded. My leader is for me and it wants me to take risks. Yeah, it comes to the way that we are trying to reach children. I also think, this idea of being positive, right? Not unrealistic, but just highlighting the good things that are happening and celebrating those, leaning in, exploring why are those things happening. I mean, it's really critical for culture to move this direction of, yes, we can. In all cultures, you have wins and losses, right? I mean, every day, on a campus. And so being able to say, hey, yeah, we got some losses, but let's look at the wins and let's celebrate that and lean into why did we have a win and how do we replicate that?
Right, right. And, our brains are wired. There's a thing called negativity bias. And so, as you go through the day, Matthew, you might get 5 compliments and 1 criticism. What do you focus on? You focus on the negative. That's just kind of the way that our brains are wired. And we have to change that. We have to reshape the way we think by thinking about the way we think. And now in my work, I coach principals. And I've discovered that so many of them, they struggle with that mindset. They struggle with being so critical of themselves. And we get in our way and we're not able to optimize the potential of our teachers and our students in the same way that we could if we could shift our mindset and focus on what I call micro wins. Just, writing down one small win every single day, focusing again on that progress, not pressure, not perfection, just progress. And I don't know what it is about the act of writing it down, but writing it down makes it so much more tangible, so much more real. And then going back and reflecting on that. So at the end of the day, reflecting on your wins, that builds your mastery and it builds that hope inside of you. And followers want leaders who have high hope. That's how we're going to change the pressure and the exhaustion and the overwhelm that people are facing in education today. So I think it's just small, consistent actions that they're going to change the world.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, and it's so great that you highlight that too, because as we get better at studying the brain and the neuroscience of that affects so many different things. I read a study recently about handwriting as it just relates to learning, but also this idea of handwriting your goals or your highlights and keeping a little handwritten journal. It's really helped us embed that positive feel that we need to maintain as leaders because no, there is a lot of pressure. You shared a little bit about the challenges, the obstacles that were there, and how did you see those start to break down? Right, you were overcoming the obstacles. Do you have an example of like one specific where you're like, yeah, this was a real challenge, and this is how we broke through?
Yeah, I would say it was one that I think of and I remember fondly happened early on. So I took the role actually in July. And then in August, after I had done a lot of those meetings with teachers, we were kind of batting around some ideas to overcome the obstacle of welcoming our new students to campus. We had a handful of new students that were joining us, and we wanted to find a way, despite hybrid schedules, remote learning, all of that, to make them really feel like they belonged. Because let's face it, people need that connection. And they needed it more than probably any other time in history during COVID. So there was a small group of teachers and I that we decided we were going to home visit. And we took every student that we knew was coming to us brand new, and we divided the list and we got in our cars and we went out and we went to their homes and we met those kids. And I was flipping through my photos the other day and I have some of those pictures of the teachers and the students and I doing selfies with those new students. It was a powerful, again, a simple thing, but it was so powerful because it created the belonging for the students. But I think it even went a step forward or further than that. Unintentionally, we were bonded. the teachers that partnered with me on that project, there was one, I just did a Lead with Hope book study this past summer. She joined the book study. We are friends on Facebook. We stay in contact, and it created that bond and that sense that together we can do so much more than we can do alone.
Absolutely. Wow, that is really incredible. I have visited with some other leaders that did something similar. And the fact that you did it as a team, that you went with your teachers. I mean, yeah, I get that. You bonded with each other. The parents that experienced that had to, one, they formed a connection. So now they felt like they had a friend inside the system, and that you were really for their child. And wow, that is really incredible. I definitely would encourage all of our leaders listening to this to replicate that as best as they can. I mean, what a great way to serve the community. One thing I noticed recently is just how not connected we are as a society. And, we moved to a new community recently, and the houses fill the whole lots. So it's intentional that you never can go outside and meet people because you have no yard. And I think, oh, wow, we're just designing things that separate us from each other. And so if we can go out and meet the families of new students, I mean, what a win.
Yeah. And the interesting thing is, we can get to know each other. We can connect on a school campus. Don't get me wrong. We do it all the time. Teachers, leaders, educators, they are excellent at forming those connections and building those relationships. But when you go out in the community and you go to their home, you really get to know them. You get to know their strengths, their weaknesses, and it's just a different level of connection that I don't think we're doing frequently enough these days. We're not really going to that level. Some of the connection that we have with people is very superficial. And if we could go a little bit deeper, I think we would do far more to address the loneliness epidemic that our kids are facing. For them to know that you are for me to the extent that you're going to come to my house and meet my parents and sit there and talk to me about what I hope for this coming school year. Wow, that's powerful.
Yeah, I really appreciate, man, you sharing some of these insights and some of the tactics, that were really, really beneficial. You had high expectations on yourself in this environment. So what is it that really kept you centered and hopeful as you were going into this challenging time?
I think that, and I've learned this more and more in the last few years, but it's value alignment. My core values are faith, family, and service. And as I have refined that and really improved my level of self-awareness for how I want to show up as a leader, what I want to be known for in this world and in this space, just leading out of your values is a powerful, powerful way to lead. And for me, my family is incredibly important, and service to others is incredibly important. But the number one there is my faith. And I've overcome a lot of obstacles in my personal and professional life. And without God, I don't know how people overcome the obstacles that they overcome. My faith in Christ gives me hope. It gives me hope personally and professionally. And I know without a shadow of a doubt that tomorrow is hopeful. There is light and there is hope and there is goodness. And I just want to share that with others through service.
That's outstanding, Brandi. Yeah, thank you. Thank you for sharing that. Faith, family, and service. Yeah, I love it. What a theme. And I know you well enough to say that you definitely lived that out. So yeah, I really appreciate that.
That's a great comment.
Yeah, there's so many great things that stood out today. I mean, I do think your calm and consistency for sure, and your care. I mean, you have a sincere care and love for people. And I know that and just the way that you were actively engaged with your team made such a big difference. I'd love for our audience to connect with you and learn more from you. What's the best way for them to do that?
My website's probably the best way for them to connect with me. If they go over to edu.com. They can connect with me. I have a free consultation tab at the top of my website. I would love to connect with them. I would love to hear from leaders what are the things that you're struggling with right now, and how are you leading with hope? I love hearing those hope-fueled stories from hope-fueled leaders. And then, Matthew, if you are willing, I would love to give the audience a free resource. It is the first chapter of my book, Lead with Hope, Building a System of Self-Efficacy. And if they go there to the link, if you put it in the show notes, then they can get that free introduction of the book. And it just takes them on a journey of how they can lead with hope and integrate that hope into their leadership.
Wow, that is great. Yeah, we'll definitely do that. That's a special gift. Yes, thank you. Thank you, Brandi, for offering that for sure. Well, if you found today's episode valuable, I sure did, please share it with a colleague or an educator who would benefit. If you haven't already, follow Transformational Educators so you never miss an episode. And until next time, keep leading with purpose and transforming schools into places where everyone thrives. If today's conversation gave you fresh insight or inspired you to lead with purpose, please follow the show and tell a friend. It helps us reach more educators who want to make a difference. For more stories, resources, and tools to support your leadership journey, visit graceland.edu. Until next time, keep leading with courage and care.